Single mom's heartwarming subway encounter. One unexpected moment changed their lives forever. On a gray morning, the screeching subway pulled into the station, bringing with it the pungent aroma of coffee mixed with the sweat and hurriedness of the busy city. Julia, a 33-year-old single mother, wrestled with the chaos of life. Balancing her two kids, Maya and Noah, on one hip and a heavy bag of cleaning supplies on the other, she stepped onto the crowded train, feeling every jolt of the car as it lurched forward. Every day felt like a battle to keep her family afloat in the unforgiving tides of Chicago life, but today, something felt different. Today was the day everything would change. The air inside the subway was thick with the scent of humanity. She squeezed into a corner, her eyes scanning the faces around her. That's when she locked eyes with Tom. Disheveled and weary, the older man wore a look of long-forgotten pride that sent a chill down her spine. Those haunted eyes shared stories of struggles that echoed within her own heart. In that moment, their gazes held a world of unspoken understanding. "Hey, Mama! Watch your kids!" a fellow commuter shouted, breaking the spell. Julia blinked, refocusing on the chaos surrounding her. As the train rattled on, she couldn't shake Tom's stare from her mind. What was his story? Did he have kids? What battles had he fought? As if sensing her turmoil, Tom's eyes softened, revealing layers of depth and despair, a reminder of fragility hidden under the surface of their bustling city. Just as the train screeched to a halt, Julia felt an unusual urge to reach out. The words that fell from her lips were almost instinctual. "Would you like to join us for a meal?" His eyes widened with surprise, but then a flicker of hope lit up his face like the dawn breaking through the darkest night. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The diner was nearby, a small, worn-out place that served the best pancakes in the city. As they sat down at the booth, Maya and Noah giggling in their seats, Julia asked Tom about his past. With every word he spoke, Julia's heart twisted tighter. Tom's stories of war and loss clashed with her daily grind, exposing the raw truths of shattered dreams and the burdens of survival. They confirmed what she'd always felt but rarely voiced. The gap between their realities was a chasm, yet here they were, united in their fight for more. But then, as they began reaching out to the community for support, disaster struck. The funding they hoped for fell through, like sand slipping through fingers. Doubt crept in like a thief in the night, but with each setback, Julia's fire only grew. She rallied neighbors, igniting conversations, fighting the skepticism and disbelief that came from the elites they approached. Could their shared hope withstand the weight of the world pressing down on them? As tensions rose and frustration mounted, Julia's hope began to flicker. Could something as simple as a meal spark change? Standing together with Tom, hope hung in the air with palpable intensity. With each passing train, their resolve solidified, but a question lingered: would their little idea spark a revolution, or would the tide of doubt wash them away? As the train pulled into the next station, their eyes remained locked, hearts racing with both fear and anticipation. Would this connection lead to something monumental? The diner hummed with life. Plates clattered, coffee pots poured, and laughter erupted from tables filled with families. But for Julia and Tom, the atmosphere felt electric. Their initial meal had transformed into brainstorming sessions, fueled by cups of coffee and the thick sweetness of syrup-slicked pancakes. Each idea brought forth was a flicker of hope, igniting a fire within Julia that she had almost forgotten existed. "Maybe we could start small," Tom suggested, his brow furrowed in thought. His hands moved animatedly as he spoke, bringing a sense of urgency to their conversation. Community dinners in the park, sharing stories, sharing food. We could ask folks to bring what they can. Julia's heart raced. It was simple, but it felt right. Yes. A potluck. People love to share what they cook. And we could have a corner for stories. The words poured out of her like a wave, each idea adding momentum. But soon she grew quiet, the weight of her responsibilities creeping in. But who will help us? She murmured, her voice shaky as doubt began to creep back in. Tom picked up his coffee, his expression unyielding. We could ask the folks we meet on the subway, the ones we see every day. It might surprise you how many want to join. His calm demeanor was like a balm to her swirling thoughts. The subway, she realized, was a microcosm of the city, filled with people who faced their own battles. They were all just trying to connect, just like her and Tom. As they sketched out plans, each delicate detail became a stitch in this budding tapestry of hope. Julia felt the burdens on her shoulders lighten with each idea. This was more than a meal. It was their way of extending hands to those who felt untethered. Days turned to weeks as they worked tirelessly to organize the event. Flyers plastered on poles, Facebook groups buzzing with excitement, and the whispers of strangers turning into promises of participation. Each time they received a message from a local willing to contribute, joy coursed through Julia's veins, igniting her belief that change was possible. The day of the potluck arrived, bright and filled with promise. The sun beamed down on the park, creating an inviting glow. Tables adorned with colorful tablecloths stood ready, groaning under the weight of lovingly prepared dishes. Familiar faces filled the space, neighbors, commuters, and curious bystanders drawn in by the scents wafting through the air. As Julia took in the scene, her emotions swirled. Maya and Noah played happily with new friends, while laughter filled the air. And there was Tom, mingling easily with the crowd, drawing people in with his tales. It was the community she had yearned for, the kind that held each other up. But just as exhilaration surged, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows, a city official, face stern, clipboard in hand. He approached with a commanding presence, silencing the bustling chatter as he cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he began, "this gathering isn't sanctioned." A wave of panic swept over Julia. Would this all come crashing down? Her heart raced, yet she stood tall, threading her determination into her next words. "We're just sharing a meal, connecting with our community." Would her plea resonate? Would the strength of their unity be enough to withstand this challenge? Just as she felt the hope beginning to slip, she looked around at the faces of support, the laughter, the stories, the food, all the pieces that had brought them together. Her heart pounded fiercely in her chest. As tension hung thick in the air, she understood one thing clearly: what they were building was bigger than a simple meal. It was a chance for transformation. But would they fight to keep it? Tom met her gaze, his eyes fierce. "Together," he mouthed. And in that moment, Julia knew they were ready to face whatever storm came their way. The city official's next words would decide everything. Would they stand strong against the tide, or would fear chase them back to where they started? The city official looked over the crowd, his disapproving gaze sending a ripple of dread through Julia. It felt surreal, this moment when their hard work teetered on the edge of collapse. Julia's heart hammered as she held her breath, hoping for a miracle. She caught sight of her children, innocent and joyful, not yet understanding the weight that hung in the balance. The murmurs of the crowd grew anxious, voices rising with concern. "What do we do?" someone whispered, eyes darting nervously. Others looked around, waiting for a signal, a cue to either stand their ground or disperse in fear. Julia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside her. "This isn't just a potluck. It's a gathering of stories and dreams. We're celebrating our community." Her conviction rang clear, echoing through the tension. She turned slightly to see Tom nodding in agreement, his expression one of the calm in a storm. The official shifted, still holding the clipboard like a shield. "I understand the sentiment. It's commendable. But rules are rules. You need permits for gatherings like this." A lump formed in Julia's throat. Was that all they were now, a tangle of bureaucracy that threatened to choke their desires for connection? "We can't just pack up and leave. We're bringing people together. We're feeding hungry hearts." The desperation in her tone pulled at the crowd. They were here for more than food, they were here for each other. Somewhere in the throng, a voice rose, the soft yet clear tremor of an older woman. She's right. We've all been isolated, alone. This potluck is a lifeline. Encouragement rippled through the crowd, and others chimed in, sharing their first-hand experiences of loneliness, hardship, and the joyous tales of connection they hope to cultivate today. The official's demeanor wavered. He seemed taken aback, perhaps even momentarily softened by the genuine emotion surrounding him. "Look, I get it," he began, but Julia seized her chance, heart pounding with urgency. "Everyone here is more than just a name on a list or a gathering in a park. We're a community that has cried together, laughed together, and now, we have the chance to feast and share our stories. Isn't that worth supporting?" The man hesitated, glancing at the faces around him. Every expression was a mixture of hope, warmth, and a desire to belong. How could he deny such a plea? "Let us put the permits aside today," he said, almost begrudgingly. "But this better stay peaceful." Relief washed over Julia and the crowd erupted in cheers. Laughter and applause filled the air as they cheered at the small victory, the first step toward their collective dream. As the joyous noise simmered down, Julia felt a swell of gratitude. She looked around, her heart bursting with appreciation for Tom, Maya, Noah, and everyone else who had come together. Hope was tangible now. But then, as she caught the last glimmer of sunlight filtering through the trees, she felt a flicker of doubt. This small victory was just the beginning, and challenges were bound to follow. How would they sustain this momentum? Lost in her thoughts, she barely noticed Tom leaning closer. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Her breath hitched. "What if they come back? What if we can't keep this up?" His grip on her arm was reassuring. "We go farther than before. We keep pushing." And at that moment, as the sun dipped low, illuminating their hopeful faces, Julia realized it wasn't just about the potluck anymore. They had the power to start something bigger, something that could reach beyond just them. What they built here could spread like wildfire. With that fire in her belly, Julia nodded, determination blazing anew. But just as she felt invincible again, she spotted a group of young people retreating from the park. Distraught and murmuring to each other, their faces brought a fresh wave of anxiety. What has happened? Julia wondered aloud. Was their journey about to take another unexpected turn? Julia's pulse quickened as she watched the young people huddled together, their faces drawn with worry. The festive atmosphere around the potluck felt fragile now, like a balloon teetering on the edge of popping. She exchanged worried glances with Tom before making her way toward the group. "Hey there," she called out gently, her heart aching as she took in their worried expressions. "What's going on?" One of the young men, a tall kid with tousled hair, looked up at her, his brow furrowed. "We heard some of the city officials are shutting down the event, even after what just happened." His voice was laced with frustration and fear. "We wanted to support you guys, but..." Julia's heart sank. "No, it's okay. We just spoke to one of them. It's complicated, but we have a chance to keep this going." She reassured him, though doubt gnawed at her insides. "Are you sure?" another girl asked, her eyes wide with concern. "Because if they come back with more people, there's not much we can do." Finding herself at the center of their worry, Julia felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her chest. These kids looked to her, searching for hope. She couldn't let them down again. "We've made progress," Julia said, her voice steadying. "And if we all stand together, there's nothing that can stop us. Let us show them what we can do, as a community." Murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the group. Julia watched as they shared glances, weighing the idea of joining forces. She could feel the spark igniting in their hearts too. "Let us make this potluck bigger," the tall kid suggested, a grin breaking through his worried expression. "What if we organize to bring more food, games, maybe even music?" "Yes. Let us invite more people," another girl chimed in. "We could create banners, spread the word on social media. We can't let them take this from us." Hope surged within Julia, warming her like the sun breaking through clouds. She nodded, urging the enthusiasm further. "Exactly. If we spread the message, others will join us. There's strength in numbers." We can show them what this event means to us. The young people rallied, their spirits lifting as they began discussing logistics. Who would bring what dish, who could put together a playlist, and how to invite others in the neighborhood. Julia felt the energy shift, a collective determination blooming like flowers breaking through cold soil. But as their planning continued, a shadow hovered in the back of her mind. What if the officials came back in greater numbers? What if they clamped down before the movement could gain momentum? Tom leaned in close again, catching the concern lining her features. You're leading them, Julia. Whatever happens, they're with you now. She took a deep breath, absorbing his words. Her heart swelled as she thought of her own kids, of their laughter that pierced through the chaos. She knew this potluck was about more than just food, it was about family, connection, resilience. With renewed energy, Julia's voice rose above the chatter. Let us meet at first light to organize. We can formulate a plan and make this potluck the best it has ever been. Cheers erupted in the group, as laughter blended with excitement, and that feeling of hope rekindled just as the sun dipped below the horizon. But in the back of her thoughts loomed a fear she couldn't shake. Was it enough? As they all began to disperse, excitement electrifying the air, Julia caught sight of a figure lingering at the edge of the park, shadowed and watchful. A chill ran down her spine. Who were they, and what did they want? The uncertainty loomed, and Julia felt her heart race again. What now? The next morning dawned bright and clear. Julia, filled with a mix of excitement and concern, awoke earlier than usual. She could hear the soft chirping of birds outside her window, but the thrill of the potluck weighed heavily on her mind. She wanted to make a difference, not just for her children, but for every family who felt the tightening grip of the officials. As she prepared breakfast, she felt the nervous energy bubbling inside her. Her kids, Ella and Max, wandered in, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. They sensed her intensity, exchanging quiet glances. "Mom, are you okay?" Ella asked, her innocent eyes searching Julia's. "Yeah, just lots to do today," Julia replied, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Max poured himself some cereal, considering her words. "What's happening? More food for the potluck?" "Yeah, buddy. And we need to spread the word. It's time to show how strong our community is," she said, the conviction steadying her voice. They finished breakfast and gathered their things, ready to join the others at the park. As they walked, Julia's heart raced with every step. She could see the park looming ahead and sensed the buzz of activity. Colorful decorations were being set up, laughter filled the air, and young people scurried about, driven by a shared purpose. When they arrived, the sight was uplifting. Banners announcing "Together we are stronger" flapped in the gentle breeze, and the smell of freshly cooked food wafted through the air. Faces lit up as Julia and her kids joined the growing crowd. Everyone was buzzing with ideas, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus of determination. But amidst the joy, that nagging feeling returned. Could they really pull this off? As Julia helped string up decorations, she noticed the same figure from the night before. It stood further back from the bustling crowd, arms crossed and shadowed by a tree. Julia's heart caught in her throat. They hadn't moved, watching silently. "Do you see that person?" she whispered to Tom, who was busy taping a poster. "Yeah, I do," he said, his brow furrowing. "Let us keep an eye on them." Their gazes locked onto the mystery figure, whose sharp eyes seemed to scan the scene. As Julia's anxiety climbed, she tried to focus on the task at hand. They needed this potluck to thrive, more than ever. Suddenly, a loud cheer erupted from the group as someone unveiled a massive cake, vibrant and decorated with colorful frosting that read "Community Forever." Laughter spilled out around her, cutting through the tension. In that moment, Julia felt a flicker of hope. She glanced back at Tom. "This is it. This is our chance to show them we won't back down." But just as she turned away, she saw the figure striding towards the group with purpose. Her breath hitched. "What is going on?" she thought, dread creeping into her stomach. Julia leaned closer to Tom, her voice barely a whisper. "What if they're here to shut us down?" The crowd buzzed with excitement, unaware of the storm that threatened to descend. Julia took a step back as the figure drew closer, their intentions unclear. "Stay with me." "Whatever happened," she began, but she didn't finish. The moment felt suspended in time, a snapshot of uncertainty hanging just above the potluck like a pop song on the brink of its big chorus. And then the figure spoke. "What's going on here?" Their voice cut through the cheerful chatter like a knife, directing every gaze toward them. Julia clenched her jaw, heart racing as she prepared to face whatever awaited her next. This was going to change everything. What would the figure ask? And would they tear apart the hope that had just begun to bloom? The figure stepped into the light, revealing a tall woman with a sharp jaw and an assertive expression. Julia felt the excitement in the air shift slightly, the laughter quieting as uncertainty began to ripple through the crowd. "Who are you?" someone called out, breaking the thick tension that hung between them. "I'm here to understand what is happening," the woman replied, her voice steady. "I'm from the city council. We've received reports about these gatherings. I just want to make sure everything is in order." Julia's heart sank. "Reports?" That sounded serious. She shared worried glances with Tom, who now stood rigid beside her. The cheerful glow of the potluck seemed to flicker, dimmed by an unwelcome reality. "Everything is fine," Julia called out, summoning courage. "We're just trying to support our community." The woman's expression softened slightly, but she remained wary. "Support how? Gathering like this can draw attention. We need to ensure everyone is safe." Julia stepped forward, fueled by a sudden surge of passion. "We're here to stand together. Many families are struggling, and we want to show that we care, that we're not alone. This isn't just a potluck, it's hope. Hope that we can change things together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Julia felt a wave of strength wash over her. This was their moment. "I understand that," the woman said, her posture relaxing a little. "But the officials have their concerns. You have to realize that they're worried about how these events might be misinterpreted." "Misinterpreted?" Tom interjected, disbelief in his voice. "We're just trying to support each other, to show we're united. Helping each other shouldn't be a problem." Julia's heart raced. This was not the response she had expected. She knew she needed to steer the conversation back to hope, not fear. "Maybe we can find a way to work together," Julia suggested, her voice steady. "We just want a chance to show how we're coming together as a community. Perhaps you could help? You could see the support we have, meet those who need it. You might be surprised." At that moment, the crowd around them began to murmur again, picking up her call to rally. Some called out words of support, while others shared their stories of struggle and resilience. Julia could see the woman's resolve beginning to waver as she took in the scene before her. The atmosphere shifted. Laughter mixed with tears of hope and understanding, painting a vibrant picture of unity. Something unmistakable was happening. Walls began to break down. "Let us find a solution," the woman finally said, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Show me how you're making an impact." Julia stepped back, wide-eyed, feeling a mix of disbelief and joy. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? "All right," she said, nodding slowly. "Let us show you." As they gathered together, Julia felt the energy soar. The sound of children laughing, of dishes clattering, of people sharing stories filled the air. They had taken a leap of faith, and now it was met with a cautious opportunity. But just as the hope began to blossom, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the park. Julia's heart sank again. "What now?" The group turned toward the sound, a growing sense of alarm spreading throughout the assembled families. Whatever was happening next could threaten everything they had fought for. In that moment of uncertainty, Julia felt a rising tide of adrenaline. Together, they would face whatever challenge lay ahead. She took a deep breath, ready to lead by example once again, knowing deep down that their battle was far from over. What had happened now? And would they need every ounce of courage they had to protect what they had built? A hush fell over the potluck as the crowd instinctively turned towards the source of the crash. Julia's heart raced. The air was thick with tension, the laughter and chatter faded, replaced by a nervous murmur that spread like wildfire. She stepped forward, scanning the park for anything unusual. "What was that?" someone whispered, their gaze darting around. Julia strained her ears, listening. The noise had come from the other side of a cluster of oak trees. It sounded like a skirmish, a clatter of metal, followed by raised voices. She exchanged worried looks with Tom, who clenched his fists at his sides, ready to defend their gathering if needed. "We need to check it out," Julia said, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. With a determined nod, Tom stepped alongside her, and together they made their way through the crowd, urging others to stay behind for safety. As they approached the trees, Julia's stomach twisted. What if it was something serious? What if they were about to face something that could shatter the fragile hope they had begun to build? Peeking around the trunk of a massive oak, Julia surveyed the scene. There, near a fallen picnic table, stood a group of teenagers, huddled together, laughing and tossing an empty can. The laughter was careless, reckless, and in stark contrast to the fear that gripped her heart. A few feet away, a small child had dropped her plate of food, a cascade of pasta sliding to the dirt. "Hey!" Julia called out, stepping fully into view, her voice echoing with authority. "What do you think you're doing? This isn't a playground." The teens stopped, their laughter fading as they turned to face her. One of them, tall with a baseball cap tipped back, sneered slightly. "Chill out, lady. We're just having some fun." Julia felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "Fun? You're ruining something important to all of us here. We're trying to support each other, not tear each other down." The words poured out, tinged with desperation. "Can't you see that?" Her intensity caught them off guard. A moment of silence fell as they processed her words. Staring into the eyes of the young man, she could see a flicker of uncertainty, a glimpse of something deeper, perhaps regret or recognition. Another voice broke through. "We just wanted to hang out. We didn't mean to bother anyone." This came from a girl, stepping forward, her embarrassment visible as she looked down at her scuffed sneakers. Feeling her heart soften, Julia took a breath. "Look, we're all struggling in one way or another. This potluck is about coming together, finding hope. You're welcome to join us if you want." A flicker of indecision crossed their faces. "Isn't it better to sit down and share a meal than to argue?" Tom added, stepping up beside her. "Join us. You might be surprised at what you find." The air was heavy with expectation. Julia watched as the teens exchanged glances, a silent conversation unfolding. Slowly, the boy with the cap shrugged, and then they began to inch closer, hesitant but curious. "Okay," he said finally. "Maybe we will." Julia felt a swell of relief. The moment felt electric, a small victory in the midst of potential chaos. They had responded to her call for unity, and every ounce of fear ebbed away. As they rejoined the group, laughter began to return, threading through the air once more, stitching together the fabric of their community. But just as the atmosphere began to shift back to warmth, Julia heard the unmistakable sound of sirens approaching in the distance. Panic shot through her once again. What did this mean for the fragile alliance that had begun? Would they manage to hold on to their hope, or would the outside world crash in once more, threatening to undo everything they had built? With the sirens closing in, Julia knew one thing as she stood among her neighbors: this was only the beginning. Julia's heart raced anew as the wail of sirens grew louder, a chilling reminder of the world beyond the park. She could feel the tension ripple through the crowd. Eyes widened, fingers fidgeted with napkins and food, and conversation hushed. Families pulled together, children looked up anxiously at their parents, and the sense of community they had just nurtured felt fragile, threatened. "Stay close," she urged Tom, who remained steadfast by her side. He nodded, but she knew he was just as worried as she was. The teenagers shuffled nervously, their earlier bravado evaporating like steam. Julia felt a pull in her heart. They had just begun to connect. "This is our chance to show them," she whispered to Tom. "We can't let fear fracture this moment." Suddenly, a voice broke through the heavy silence. "Maybe we should go," the girl with scuffed sneakers said timidly, looking at her friends. What if it's trouble? No, Julia said, her voice steady. We're better together. Whatever it is, we face it as a community. She turned to the girl, hoping to encourage her. We can share our stories. We can find strength in each other. Tom stepped forward, his eyes shining with resolve. We've been through tough times. But we're still here, and we're still fighting. We can show you what that looks like. The teenagers glanced at one another, reading the encouragement in Julia's and Tom's expressions. The boy with the baseball cap took a step closer, his earlier smirk replaced with uncertainty. What if it's something bad, though? Shouldn't we be worried? Julia took a breath, her mind racing, thinking of all the nights spent worrying alone while trying to raise her daughter. Sometimes bad things happen, she said softly. But it's how we respond that matters. Together, we stand a better chance. Just then, the shrill sirens stopped nearby. The crowd began to murmur restlessly, and Julia felt her stomach knot. Let us get everyone together, she urged, raising her voice. Let us create a circle. Share the food. Share what we have. Let them see we're united. We're stronger together. Slowly, people began to gather, forming a larger circle with the potluck spread in the center. The teenagers hesitated before joining, their expressions shifting from confusion to determination. Julia's heart soared as she watched the crowd meld into one pulse, transforming their fear into something vibrant, something powerful. We can make it through this, Tom spoke loudly now. Let us show them that this community won't break. His voice rang with conviction, and cheers erupted from the assembled neighbors, echoing against the trees. Julia felt a swell of pride as she took in the scene. Laughter returned, rekindling the connections they had forged through shared meals and stories. The teens, too, seemed enraptured, swept up in the tide of unity. She watched as the boy in the cap leaned in to talk with a little girl, drawing her into the laughter. But that brief moment of hope shattered when they heard shouting, a new, commanding voice cutting through the remnants of their celebration. Everyone, step back! A figure in a uniform emerged from the tree, lean, urgent and poised. The air turned electric again, and Julia's heart thudded against her ribs. What was happening now? As apprehension filled her, she realized the true test was about to begin. Would they stand united again, or would they falter under pressure? With mounting anxiety, Julia braced herself for the next wave. How would they respond? And what would it mean for the fragile bonds they had begun to weave? The voice carried a weight, demanding attention and respect, and Julia's heart sank deep into her chest. The crowd instinctively moved, parting like waves in some uneasily respectful show of fear. She clutched Tom's hand tighter, feeling the pulse of worry coursing through them both. The uniformed figure was tall and authoritative, scanning the crowd with sharp eyes that reflected urgency. We've received reports of a situation nearby, he said, voice steady yet urgent. We need you to remain calm and keep a safe distance. A murmur rushed through the crowd, thrumming like a nervous heartbeat. Julia caught snippets of whispered conversations. What kind of situation? And do you think it's dangerous? Each echo adding to the tension. She felt her resolve wavering, the carefree moment they had built at risk of shattering once more. No. We can't let fear win, she thought, feeling warmth surge through her. She stepped forward, her heart pushing her on. Listen! Julia called out, her voice breaking through the rising tide of panic. I know we're scared. But we have to stay strong. Look around, this is our community, and we've worked hard to build it. Tom's gaze met hers, and she saw a flicker of hope reflected in his eyes. What we build today matters. This isn't just about food or laughter, it's about us standing together, he added, his voice ringing out. The officer kept his serious demeanor, but Julia spotted something in his eyes, a flicker of acknowledgement. That is true, he said, calming his tone. And your safety is my priority. Just stay together. We will take care of things. The teens exchanged glances, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The girl with the scuffed sneakers stepped forward, her face determined. What do we do? How can we help? Julia was taken aback by the spirit she saw igniting within them. Could it be? Had they truly transformed fear into courage? Just by staying here, you're helping, she said, the words flowing with authenticity. We create a wall of strength. Tom raised his arms, beckoning the crowd into action. Come on. Let us form a line. We can hold hands. It might look silly, but it shows we're united strong. One by one, they began to link arms, the energy palpable. A network of support stretched across the park, binding adults and children alike. The officer watched, his demeanor softening as if the fear lingering in the air began dissipating. Julia glanced down the row, watching as the boy in the baseball cap smiled, his earlier trepidation melting away. In that moment, she realized that courage was contagious. The officer began walking along the line, reassuring people and encouraging them to stay together. A wave of confidence washed over Julia. Maybe they could make it through this, together. As the group settled into a rhythm of clamoring voices and laughter mingled with uncertainty, the shrill of sirens still echoed in the distance. Yet amidst this confusion, for Julia, hope flickered a little brighter. But just as the atmosphere shifted toward optimism, a piercing shout rang out from the treeling. I need help. Someone's hurt. Julia's heart dropped. This was not over. Would they have the strength now to face what was coming? What awaited them at that treeling? The call for help rang out sharply, slicing through the budding sense of unity that had enveloped Julia and her community. Each heart thudded in sync, fear creeping back into the smiles they had fought so hard to keep alive. Just moments ago, their hope had ignited, now it felt as fragile as a blown-out candle. Stay together, Julia shouted, rallying her strength. She squeezed Tom's hand, feeling the warmth of determination flow between them. We need to find out what happened. We can't lose this momentum. The crowd began to murmur nervously, glancing toward the treeline where the voice had come from. Julia stepped forward, pushing through the throng, her heart pounding in her chest as adrenaline surged. She spotted a group of teenagers surrounding a familiar face, one of the little girls from the potluck. Ella! She called, her voice a mix of relief and fear as she reached her daughter's side. Moments later, she was crouching down beside her daughter. Are you okay? Julia's voice quivered with concern as her fingers brushed through Ella's hair, checking for any injury. I'm fine, Mom. But Sam tripped and hurt his leg, Ella explained, her brown eyes wide with urgency as she pointed to a boy sitting on the ground, wincing in pain. Julia's heart raced. Let me see. She turned to the small boy, who was cradling his knee. His friends were crowding around, worry etched on their young faces. Sam, can you tell me what happened? I just fell and landed wrong, he muttered, trying to hold back tears, embarrassment mixing with pain. Julia knelt beside him, her heart swelling with empathy. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll get you help. She flashed her most encouraging smile, hoping to ease his fear. Can you try to stand? With a little assistance, Sam pushed himself up, his friends rallying around him for support. Together, they formed a small circle of camaraderie. As Julia lifted his pant leg to examine the scrape underneath, a collective breath released from the crowd, their concern shifting from panic to care. The officer who had been watching approached, his expression transitioning from authority to understanding. Do you need me to call for an ambulance? He asked, his voice calm. Julia shook her head. No, we can take care of him here. Just keep everyone calm. We need to support him. As Julia and the teenagers gently helped Sam, a soft rhythm of laughter broke the apprehension, alive and vibrant, echoing around the gathering once more. Ella, her panic subsiding, began chatting with one of Sam's friends, the innocence of youth enveloping them all. We've got this, Tom declared, moving through the crowd like a wave. He encouraged others to help gather first aid supplies, setting the tone of empowerment. Each person stepped forward, eager to contribute their strength, uniting once again in the face of uncertainty. See? Julia said, kneeling beside Sam. We're all in this together. She cleaned the scrape, bandaging it carefully while the crowd buzzed with animated conversations. Look how strong we are when we support one another. As Sam winced and smiled through the pain, the moment took on a life of its own. The bond of community seemed to pulse with every heartbeat, a network of unbreakable threads woven between the people sharing food, stories, and now, kindness. And then, as if in a grand finale, the sun dipped low, scattering rays that danced between the trees, casting a golden glow over them. Julia lifted her gaze, meeting the eyes of the officer who now stood a little closer, uncertainty written across his features shifting into something resembling admiration. "Sometimes chaos brings out the best in us," he murmured, nudging his clipboard to the side. "Keep doing what you're doing. Just take care of each other." Julia felt a rush of relief wash through her. The tide had turned. They stood together not just against hardship but against fear itself. When Sam was finally patched up and rejoined his friends, a cheer erupted through the crowd. The joy spread like wildfire, veiling the earlier anxieties under a blanket of hope. Julia smiled, watching as laughter bounced back into the air, hearts lifting through shared experiences, the stories etched in every smile, every exchange. "Together," Tom said softly as they embraced, watching the scene unfold. Julia nodded, her heart brimming. As the stars began to twinkle above, casting a soft glow over the park, Julia knew they had planted something beautiful in this community, a legacy of care, a spark of resilience. Today was about more than food. It was about creating a stronger family out of the collective heart of their city. Soon enough, she stepped to the center of the park, raising her voice once more. "Thank you all for coming out today!" Cheers responded. "Let us not forget this moment. Let us keep our community thriving, caring for one another, just as today." With every face turned to her, joy and determination fused in a shared glance. Together they had weathered storms, laughed through struggles, and held each other as hands. Together they echoed back, and Julia felt a warmth envelop her spirit. This was only the beginning. The feeling of connection lingered, an unyielding wave. And a voice inside her whispered, "We are stronger than we ever knew." As the energy in the air pulsed with love and support, she realized she had not just created a potluck, they had forged a community, a force to be reckoned with. And that was just the start of their journey. If you felt the magic of this togetherness, and want more inspiring stories and transformations, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to hit that bell and mark all notifications. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show you're in this with us. Tell us in the comments how this story lifted your spirits or moved you, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Join this incredible journey, because only true fans understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions. Let us keep this community growing,